right after the following CBS News special report. CBS News coverage of Campaign 84 continues. Tonight, the Super Tuesday presidential primaries. Reporting from CBS News election headquarters in New York, here is Dan Rather.
Good evening. With Super Tuesday still underway, here are the results so far. The overview is that the candidacy of Senator Gary Hart of Colorado keeps moving like a fast freight. The candidacy of Walter Mondale is off the side rails and is moving forward again. He wins some. Jesse Jackson continues chugging along and looks like a stayer. George McGovern has dropped out like a cut-loose caboose, and John Glenn may not be far behind him. Now, with 511 delegates at stake today, there were 5 primary states, the ones in red in the east, and 4 caucus states. Of the 511 delegates at stake today, of the ones decided thus far, CBS News estimates that Gary Hart has 165, Walter Mondale 117, Jackson, McGovern, and Glenn, and uncommitted, trailing behind in the order noted on that board. Now, of the states today, Gary Hart wins in the following states. Hart wins the Florida primary. He also wins the Massachusetts primary. Hart also wins the Rhode Island primary, and in the first of the caucus states decided, Gary Hart wins in Oklahoma. Now, Walter Mondale has won in a close race in Georgia, and Mondale has also won in Alabama. An obviously jubilant Gary Hart got together with his supporters in a Washington ballroom and claimed victory as the returns came in.
The voters of Massachusetts, of Florida and Rhode Island, indeed of Georgia, of Alabama, I hope of some Western caucus states, have joined the ranks of those in New England and in Wyoming who have said that the politics of the past will not address the challenges of the 1980s.
Gary Hart continuing to talk about new ideas. Now, here's the way the breakdown of the results known thus far looks. In Florida with 123 delegates at stake today, our CBS News estimate is that Gary Hart has beaten Walter Mondale resoundingly by about 41 to 33%, with Glenn and Jackson locked in a very tight race in Florida for third place. Former Governor Askew had dropped out previously, and George McGovern running well back. Now, as for the Florida delegates, 123 delegates at stake today, and there was the popularity contest in the primary and then another contest for the delegates. Our CBS News estimate is that when everything is decided in Florida, Gary Hart will get 66 of the Florida delegates at stake today, Walter Mondale 31, John Glenn 1, and that probably nobody else will get any of those delegates in Florida. In Massachusetts, our estimate is that when all the votes are in and counted, Gary Hart will have beaten Walter Mondale by 40% to 27%, but Mondale will have finished second in Massachusetts. For a while late in the day, Mondale and McGovern were locked in a nip-and-tuck race for second place in Massachusetts. Our CBS News estimate is that Mondale will finish second, George McGovern finishes third, and drops out of the quest for the Democratic presidential nomination. Glenn and Jackson well back in Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, in the Ocean State, Gary Hart was expected to win, and he did. Our estimate is that his final winning margin will be about 10 percentage points, 47 to 37%, with Jackson running third in Rhode Island, well back, however, followed by Glenn and McGovern. In Oklahoma, the Sooner State, a caucus state, with 27% of the precincts actually reporting, Gary Hart has about 43%, Walter Mondale 35%, uncommitted, running in third place in Oklahoma. That check mark by Hart's name indicates that our CBS News estimate is that when all of the precincts are in and reporting, Gary Hart will have won in Oklahoma, a caucus state. There was, however, some good news for Walter Mondale tonight, and he was making the best of it. Mondale appeared before his supporters in a Washington ballroom, not the same one at which Gary Hart appeared, and Mondale was saying he'll stay in.
Looked like Mondale doing a 100-yard dash. Then it looked like Hart doing a 100-yard dash. But tonight, that's all changed. It's going to be a marathon all the way to California.
Now, here is the reason that former Vice President Mondale says that it'll be a marathon all the way to California. In a race in Georgia that was very, very close for most of the evening, our CBS News estimate is that Walter Mondale wins it on the order of 3 percentage points over a second-place Gary Hart, with John Glenn and Jackson very close for third place in Georgia, but our estimate is that Glenn will finish third in Georgia, followed by, in order, Jackson and McGovern. Besides Georgia, former Vice President Mondale, with good union support and the largest black voter organization in the state behind him, beats John Glenn, Gary Hart, and Jesse Jackson, all locked in there very tight for second place in Alabama. But the important news for Mondale and his supporters, Walter Mondale wins the Alabama primary. So the overall picture again, Gary Hart wins Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Florida. He wins the caucus state of Oklahoma. Walter Mondale wins in Georgia and Alabama. Earlier tonight, I talked with Senator Gary Hart, who was in his Washington election night headquarters. He was looking at the bottom line, but thinking top line of a Super Tuesday that gave him 3 big primaries, but denied him 2 others. Senator Hart, congratulations to you again.
Thank you very much.
Your candidacy was rejected by the Democratic voters in Georgia and Alabama. That will strike a lot of people who even admire you and your candidacy as bad news.
Well, first of all, Mr. Rather, I don't call a virtual dead heat in the state of Georgia rejection, and I don't call a second or even strong third place in Alabama rejection at all. I don't think anyone ever expected me to win every state, and I said from the outset that I didn't intend to even win this nomination in the month of March. So I don't think we ought to establish a standard for me whereby if I don't carry every state, it's a rejection. I won more votes today than any other candidate, including in the South.
Senator, in your heart of hearts, you now believe you have the Democratic nomination, don't you?
No, I don't. I think it is still to be won. We have a very important primary coming up next week, a week from today in Illinois.
Senator, I can still hear those White House voices saying, give us Gary Hart. We will tag him as a George McGovern Democrat. We'll beat him just about as badly as we did George McGovern.
I somehow, Mr. Rather, don't think they're saying that to themselves. I think they're saying, we tried that tactic against him in Colorado in '74, and it didn't even work then, let alone 12 years later, when people could care less. And second, I think they're saying to themselves, we see a new candidate in the Democratic Party that we can't hang all the problems of the past on, and this fellow represents a new challenge to us.
You and I have known each other a while. You have a reputation for being honest and straight-talking, if nothing else. I have to believe that you won the nomination tonight.
I think we took a giant stride, but it is not for any candidate for himself or herself to say when they've won or not. I think it's for the other candidates to make their own decisions about whether they'll continue on.
Walter Mondale's 2 primary victories down south today came in the neighboring Deep South states, together, Georgia and Alabama. Mondale was in his Washington election night headquarters, grit and determination showing in every pore in his face, and we talked about what the future may hold for his candidacy in the glaring light of his showing today. Mr. Vice President, good evening and congratulations to you.
Thank you, Dan.
Mr. Vice President, you're a lifelong liberal Democrat with strong union support and always proud of it. And the only 2 states that you know you carry are deep in Dixie. Now, realistically, and you've always described yourself as a realist.
That's what I am. I'm a realist.
Doesn't that indicate to you that if your candidacy is still alive, it's hanging on the ropes?
No, 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 no. My candidacy is very much alive tonight. I've just won some very good victories. I've just stopped what was tremendous momentum. The debate has just started. We now go to Illinois, to Michigan, to Mississippi, to Arkansas, to Minnesota, to Puerto Rico in the next week. You just stay along with me, and you're going to see that this fight has just begun.
After New Hampshire, you said that you'd received a cold shower.
I did.
Even some people who support you and admire you will see this, what happened today, as a big chill. How would you describe it?
No, absolutely not. Just a few days ago, everybody was predicting that it was over. Now, I think most realistic observers said the fight has just begun, and that's what we have. We have a marathon here.
Do you expect it to go all the way to the convention? Let's take your opinion that it's going to be a long marathon run.
I not only expect to go to the convention, I expect to be nominated at that convention, because what I'm talking about, where I want to take this country, the issues of, for example, I am strong on arms control. Gary Hart has a very weak, inconsistent record. On the issues of social justice, of fighting for people against powerful commercial interests, I got a solid record, and his is weak. The other night in that debate over foreign policy issues, you saw the distinction between someone who's been around, knows this world, knows the difficulties, the complexities, the dangers, and someone who's not ready.
Walter Mondale saying he'll go all the way and he expects that the nomination will be decided at the convention. As we reported to you, George McGovern finished third, a fighting third, but third in the Massachusetts primary, and with that result, McGovern carried out his plan for quitting the race. He spoke tonight in Boston.
I said 2 weeks ago here in Boston that if I did not place first or second in this important primary race, that I would withdraw from the presidential competition of 1984, and that is what I intend to do.
We will have next an analysis of who voted for whom today and why in a moment.
This portion of CBS News coverage of Super Tuesday is sponsored by Emory. We've earned the trust of business worldwide. And by Sun Company. Where there's sun, there's energy.
People get a lot of fish out of these waters, and Sun Company gets a lot of oil. Over 3 million barrels a year. We know that sea life was here long before we were. This is the drill. That's why we have practice drills like this. In case of a spill, our containment unit would quickly surround the oil and help prevent damage. At Sun, we think putting our energy back into the environment is as important as getting it out.
Where there's sun, there's energy.
Why American business trusts Emory.
When an oil rig has to wait for a part, money goes down the drain. I trust Emory's same-day service.
When I send critical lab tests to 10 hospitals overnight, I count on Emory for results.
Sending documents for million-dollar deals across the country doesn't intimidate me. I trust Emory, desk to desk.
Over 1 million customers trust Emory to deliver. Call Emory. We've earned the trust of American business.
Correspondents Bob Schieffer in New England and Bruce Morton in the South have been watching closely how this Super Tuesday unfolded and been trying to analyze what happened and why in their respective areas of the nation. And here's what they came up with. First, Bob Schieffer in Boston.
Well, Dan, any way you look at it, the Northeast just continues to be bad news headquarters for Walter Mondale. Gary Hart beat him here in Massachusetts, beat him decisively, just as he did in the other northeastern states, and he hit Mondale where it hurt. He even beat him decisively among union members, even though union leaders were behind Walter Mondale. Our interviews by the CBS News New York Times pollsters with voters after they cast their ballots suggested that it would have been even worse for Walter Mondale if George McGovern had not been in the race here, because a lot of voters who voted for McGovern told us their second choice was Gary Hart. Bruce?
Bob, there was good news here in the South for Walter Mondale. He lost the biggest state, Florida to be sure, but he won the other two, Georgia and Alabama, and he did it with help from some groups he'll need later on. Organized labor may have failed him in Massachusetts, but here in Georgia, Mondale beat Hart among voters from union households, those that CBS and the New York Times interviewed as they left the polls. And in Alabama, the most unionized state in the South, Mondale won big in those union households. He beat Gary Hart by about 3-1. Second, blacks. Jesse Jackson carried the black vote here in Georgia, but Walter Mondale got a sizable chunk of it. And in Alabama, he and Jackson split the black vote just about evenly. That was very important because according to our interviews with people as they left the polls, Mondale would actually have lost. Both Alabama and Georgia had only whites voted.
Bob, let me ask you the question. Walter Mondale has yet to win in the Northeast. Where is it likely that he can win in the Northeast? There's some mighty big states still ahead, New York and Pennsylvania, to name only two. Well, apparently we're having some trouble getting Bob Schieffer. Bruce Morton, let me ask you that, as we asked Vice President Mondale, here is a lifelong liberal Democrat, proud of his union support, and the best he can say today.
Well, and I think that, you know, Walter Mondale is probably very happy to be able to say that he's won anything. You had this feeling that Gary Hart was coming south like a house on wheels, you know, all the momentum in the world, and I think for Mondale to have won two states means he can come out of here saying, I survived. And the next couple of major tests, the Michigan caucuses with the heavy UAW strength there, Illinois, where there's a lot of union labor, where there's a heavy black vote, are pretty good states for him, I would think. I don't mean that Gary Hart can't win them, but, you know, it's not like, good grief, we have to go back to New Hampshire next week.
Well, Bob Schieffer, to err is human, but to really foul up, you need a computer, and our computer never got to your, switched to you before. Let me ask you again. Walter Mondale has yet to win in the Northeast. Where can he win in the Northeast? You still have great big states to come, New York and Pennsylvania, just to name two of them.
Well, I suppose New York and Pennsylvania and Michigan, I would think that Mondale might have some kind of a chance there. My sense of it is, Dan, that what we've had here tonight is kind of a dogfall. I'm not sure we know very much more about who's going to win the Democratic nomination at this hour of the evening than we did early in the evening. Mondale does not run well in Massachusetts, in a big labor state, yet he does run well down south in a labor state. I'm not sure how much we really found out tonight, except that this race is still on. We know that George McGovern is going to be out of it now, and I expect John Glenn's going to have to make a decision pretty soon on what he's going to do. But it seems to me that Walter Mondale and Gary Hart are still in this race.
And increasingly, it looks like it may be decided at the convention itself. Before Super Tuesday, John Glenn acknowledged that his campaign couldn't afford to go any deeper in debt without a win today. And there was no win for the former astronaut this day, but so far he hasn't quit. It's under the heading, you have to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to check them. Glenn right now is checking them. He issued an ambiguous statement tonight.
I think it's fair to say that the results of today's election were mixed and provided the very clearest indication yet that our party still has a horse race on its hands. And as of tonight, about 16% of the delegates to the Democratic National Convention have been chosen. And if the voters have proven nothing else, they've proven they want a new direction for the Democratic Party and new leadership in Washington.
George McGovern out, but John Glenn not, at least not yet. There were substantial black votes today in two states, Alabama and Georgia. Jesse Jackson scored impressively with the black voters there. First, though, let's look at how Jackson did in all 5 primaries. Our CBS News estimate is that when all the votes are in and counted, Jesse Jackson will have received 20% of the vote in Alabama, 11% of the vote in Florida, 19% in Georgia, less, but still a sizable vote in Massachusetts and in Rhode Island. Now, in Alabama and Georgia, here was the breakdown. Jackson received about 50% of the black votes in Alabama, and in Georgia, 61%. He also received only 1% of the white vote in each of those states. Among voters aged 18 to 29, Jackson won approximately 35% in Alabama and 27% in Georgia. Among voters 60 years and over, Jackson got about 11% in Alabama, 14% in Georgia. A short time ago, I talked to the Reverend Jesse Jackson in Montgomery, Alabama. Reverend, if you didn't get nearly all of the black vote in Alabama and Georgia, clearly Walter Mondale got a large percentage of it. Doesn't that indicate to you that your pulling power among blacks is lacking?
No, it does not. It means that the black voter tends to be more liberal and more generous toward whites than whites are toward blacks. We will mature ultimately when whites vote for blacks as blacks vote for whites. Reciprocal voting has to be one that goes to the Democratic Party as well as integrated slate making.
Reverend, you must be aware that any number of people are saying tonight Gary Hart has the nomination. Would you agree that he is at the very least breathtakingly close to having it sewn up?
Oh, he has tremendous momentum at this point. It remains to be seen whether it is a balloon or a ball. Gary began this week to confront some reality, had to begin to face the pressures of being a front runner, and he expressed that pressure Sunday, of course. He was looking over in a 707 airliner to determine whether or not they had on uniforms or whether they were dressed in civilian clothes as Russia is coming across Colorado. Well, these type faux pas will if they come often enough, will begin to make people reassess the fad from a new reality.
One wants to keep in mind the size of the vote in these Democratic primaries. Now, in Iowa and New Hampshire, about 200,000 voters cast their ballots, but tonight that escalated dramatically. Here's the way it looks. This is with 88% of the precincts from all of the primary states today in. Those are the vote totals. You can see that before tonight, there were about 200,000 votes cast in Iowa and New Hampshire. You see how many votes were cast today. True, this is a very small percentage of the eligible voters even in the Democratic Party, never mind the percentage of the total overall vote, but the number of people going to primaries and caucuses today has escalated dramatically, and that's one reason it was called Super Tuesday. Quickly recapping now, and we have more for you. Gary Hart has won Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Florida, and Oklahoma. Walter Mondale has won in Georgia and Alabama. And we'll be back to talk about that with Bill Moyers and some of our other correspondents after first please these messages.
If you want to buy a phone, it's cheaper than AT&T.
What you really need is cheap long distance.
And of course, our business systems are cheaper than AT&T.
You won't get anything this cheap from AT&T.
Everyone's saying they're cheaper than AT&T, but nobody's saying they're better. All they can say is that they're cheaper. To which we say, you get what you pay for.
Hello, Jean. Sorry to call so late, but I'm worried about Mike. I don't like the sound of his cough. It's very congested. Formula 44D? Thanks.
Take strength from this. Vicks Formula 44D is now twice as strong to loosen worrisome chest congestion. It also quiets coughing and helps drain nasal congestion. And it's the only leading formula that can do all that.
See, honey, nothing to worry about.
Vicks Formula 44D, made stronger to take the worry out of congested coughs.
Last year, as part of the industry's most extensive safety-related research and testing program, General Motors totaled 241 beautiful new cars, looking for even better ways to protect GM passengers and drivers. Nobody sweats the details like GM.
When you burn the candle at both ends, there's a vitamin just for you. Advanced Formula Stress Tabs with biotin. A vitamin not found in other stress formulas. A vitamin essential to help convert food to energy. When you burn the candle at both ends, support your diet with Advanced Formula Stress Tabs with biotin, the official stress formula vitamin of the 1984 Winter Olympics.
We'll talk now with our correspondents covering the two leading candidates, Gary Hart and Walter Mondale. First, Eric Engberg with the Hart campaign and at Hart headquarters in Washington. Eric, what happens next? Where do we go from here? What is the next most dangerous zone for Gary Hart as he and his aides see it?
Well, I guess, Dan, humorously, I could say that going to the head of the pack is the most dangerous zone. He will now have to wear the mantle of front runner, a title that he has always run from before, and I guess probably not surprisingly in view of what's happened to the other front runner this year. He heads into Michigan tomorrow to campaign, and that I think would have shocked anybody 3 weeks ago to see Gary Hart campaigning in Michigan, because that's a very strong union state where the UAW is very powerful. Here is a candidate, Hart, who voted against the Chrysler bailout. He will have to explain that to the Michigan caucus voters. His own aides admit that they do not expect Hart to win in Michigan, but they feel they have to go campaign there because they are now in the position of running a national campaign. After that, it's on to Illinois, and I think the people in the Hart campaign see Illinois as being an explosive contest in which the whole thing might be settled.
Susan Spencer, it was said after New Hampshire that now we begin to see whether Walter Mondale was a get-up fighter. He's demonstrated that. He won in Georgia, won in Alabama. Where does he go now, and what is the next most dangerous zone for him?
Well, I think Illinois also is the most dangerous zone, but I think their plan, if all works out as they hope, is to go into Illinois with a little boost. They've got these southern caucuses coming up on Saturday. They are better organized than is Gary Hart in those southern states. Then they've got the Puerto Rico primary on Sunday, none of which accumulates all that many delegates, but they say these are our little Wyomings. This is what can give us a little push to get into Illinois. I tell you, when Mr. Mondale stood at that podium and said the 100-yard dash is now the marathon, there was sort of a collective sigh from the reporters covering him, but nobody doubts that he means it.
Eric Engberg, in their heart of hearts, do the Gary Hart people believe they have it won?
I don't think so, Dan, and a week ago I did, because a week ago when they were riding that crest of what they called the tidal wave, the prairie fire, as Hart himself calls it, I think that they felt that everything was breaking in their direction so well that there was no telling where it might end, and that it might end tonight. But talking to Pudge Hinkle and some of the other supporters, Pudge Hinkle's the senator's campaign manager, and some of the other supporters tonight, I was told repeatedly that we're in this thing all the way to the Democratic convention in San Francisco. We believe that votes cast on June 5th mean just as much as votes cast today, Super Tuesday. And I really believe now in my own heart that they're ready to fight this thing out all the way to the convention.
Susan Spencer, in the few seconds we have left for this, do the Mondale people in their heart of hearts believe it's over?
I don't think so. I really don't. I think that they still have a chance. I think they think that when the public scrutinizes Mr. Hart more closely, that their man will pull ahead again.
Thank you very much, Susan Spencer and Eric Ingberg. Bill Moyers, you've been setting aside, looking at what's happening tonight. It isn't over. It looked at from one perspective, it seems to be a long way from over.
I think so, and particularly if you're sitting down there in Texas and California and out where in Washington where it's still going on tonight. You don't want this thing to be over. You don't want the regional northeastern part of the United States to speak for the whole nation. You don't want Alabama or Florida to speak for the whole nation. That's something I think rather exciting and interesting about primaries, is that each one of them takes on a life of its own, and you change what you're going to do because of what happened last week. So out there in the West, they don't want this to be over.
Bill, I have to believe that in the White House, they are saying to themselves, the Democrats are tearing their party asunder, and we'll beat either one of these guys, Mondale or Hart.
Well, they're very shrewd and smart down there, and they don't take much for granted in the White House, and I doubt that they would be saying that with much assurance. They've got to look at the Democratic Party, Dan, and realize that the significance of what's happened in the last month is that the ideal of popular choice is deeply ingrained in American politics. The message of this last month to me has been, don't take us for granted. There's a struggle going on in this country, and has been in both parties for a decade now, between openness and participation and confidence in conventional authority. It's this test between authority and this challenge of openness and participation that is at the heart of an exciting Democratic race, and it could well be that that becomes a head of steam for the Democrats coming out of San Francisco heading toward November.
But if that's the case, isn't Gary Hart in the best position to take advantage of it? He's the one who's cast himself as the new man, despite Walter Mondale's tremendous record and protestations.
He has been so far. You know, it was important a month ago for somebody to be there to take advantage of the anti-front-runner sentiment. And you had to be not well enough known to be disliked. I mean, American politics loves to get to know you so they can put you straight. And Gary Hart was little known. His timing has been wonderful, and his manner has been uplifting under pressure. But the fact of the matter is, people knew too little about him not to vote against him in trying to find an alternative to Mondale.
Well, that certainly will be changing. Now, we'll be back with more coverage of this Super Tuesday in a moment.
Whirlpool announces 2 beautiful new home appliance features. The elegant look of platinum, the warm look of toast. 2 beautiful new colors, platinum and toast. Now are no fingerprint refrigerators, easy to clean ranges, energy efficient dishwashers. Even our solid state washers and dryers come in beautiful new platinum and toast. Best of all, they come with the Whirlpool promise to give you your money's worth and help make your world a little easier.
These days, everyone's got some kind of telephone deal for you. But how can I beat a deal like the AT&T phone right here in my home? Works great, rings true, not a lick of trouble. I called AT&T's toll-free number and found out I don't have to do anything to keep old reliable right here. I can keep on leasing it or buy it. You know, you may already have your hands on the best telephone deal in town.
AT&T, we set this.
Introducing Great Beginnings. Delicious meat and gravy already prepared.
Oh, the wonders you can do. With a single can or two. You can pour it over this. You can pour it over that. Add a little bit of this and a little bit of that. Great Beginnings. And do all that. A little bit of this and a little bit of that. A little bit of that. Great Beginnings. Really can fun. In a matter of a moment, all the cooking has been done.
When you start with Great Beginnings, there's no end to what you can do. Try all 4 from Hormel.
Nobody brings you the first word like Eyewitness News. Metro Police conduct a controversial research project that sets more than 100 accused DUI offenders scot-free.
Larry Breton brought you the first word on that story. And it was Pat Nolan's exclusive satellite interview with the EPA in Washington that prompted the Metro Council to delay action on its auto emissions testing plan. When it comes to breaking news, we're the friends you can turn to for the first word. Channel 5.
One result of Super Tuesday, as former Vice President Walter Mondale has said, is that what may have appeared to be a 100-yard dash now takes on the aspects of a marathon. And here's why as we look at the results today from the individual states. In the state of Florida, with 123 delegates at stake today, with 88% of the precincts in and reporting, Hart leads Mondale by about 7 percentage points, with Jesse Jackson running third in Florida. Now, in the Massachusetts primary, also won by Gary Hart on the basis of our CBS News estimates, with 81% of the precincts now reporting, these are actual votes cast, Hart leading Mondale 40% to 26%, with McGovern winding up third and dropping out of the race in Massachusetts. In Rhode Island, another primary state, won by Gary Hart. With 99% of the precincts in the small state of Rhode Island, Gary Hart over Walter Mondale, 46 to 35%, with Jackson running third there. Oklahoma, the first of the caucus states decided, with 37% of the precincts reporting, Hart leads Mondale as indicated. That checkmark by Hart's name means that CBS News estimates that when all of the votes are in and counted from the Oklahoma caucuses, Hart will have won in Oklahoma. However, Mondale had a good day. Mondale, at least in Georgia and Alabama, in a tight race in Georgia, one that for a while was nip and tuck between Mondale and Hart, with 98% of the precincts reporting now. Mondale has won the Georgia primary. His winning margin will be on the order of 31% to 28%, with Jackson running third in Georgia. And in Alabama, the second win of the day for Walter Mondale, with 94% of the precincts reporting in Alabama now. Mondale's winning margin over the second place contenders, Glenn and Hart, very close for second place in Alabama. Look how close it is for second place in Alabama. But Mondale, however it goes for second place, also wins the Alabama primary. Needed to win at the National Democratic Nominating Convention this next summer, 1,967 delegate votes. That is, after all, a great part of what today was about. Our CBS News estimate is that from all sources all over the country, of delegates that have been decided or indicated how they've decided, Walter Mondale has 312 delegate votes, Gary Hart 217, with Glenn, Jackson, and McGovern following in that order. Super Tuesday, 1984, is practically the morning after, and anyone who hoped or expected today's Democratic primaries and caucuses in nearly a fifth of our United States to pinpoint a clear-cut favorite will be greatly disappointed tonight. George McGovern has quit the contest. Gary Hart won 3 primaries and 1 caucus state. Walter Mondale won 2 of the primaries. But neither Hart nor Mondale sees these mixed results as any kind of stunning victory or dream-ending setback. Senator Hart vows that for him, the best is yet to come. For Mondale, the vow is, I have only begun to fight, and the best part of my fight is ahead of me. Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows. Dan Rather from CBS News Election Headquarters in New York, thank you for being with us. Good night.
Come drift into sleep, set sail on a voyage into the night.
Night voyages on Spring Air. Our back supporter mattress is a unique support system. Exclusive springs form a special health center that's a dream to sleep on.
The most beautiful nights are on Spring Air.
Night voyages on Spring Air. Sleep first class.
Detailed studies of the human body, biomedical research, computer-aided design. 2 years and countless clay models, trying different shapes, new materials, doing it over, again and again, all to design a more comfortable, durable seat for General Motors cars and trucks. Leonardo would have loved it. Nobody sweats the details like GM.
This portion of CBS News coverage of Super Tuesday was sponsored by General Motors. Extra time, extra effort, and attention to every detail. GM is committed to excellence. And by Spring Air. Night voyages begin on the back supporter mattress.
This is CBS.
Hard to believe some folks have never tried.
And pizza?
At Pizza Hut.
Never tried it?
Oh, you gotta get out of the house more often.
Oh, lots of cheese. Very observant. Joey, save some for us. Hey, Joey, eat better than you bowl.
So, how do you like pan pizza?
Joey.
At your hometown Pizza Hut.
Earth to Joey.
I got you.
That you have, Archie Campbell. And now you get 3 wishes.
I wish for an S10 pickup.
Easy. They're less than $6,600 at E.B. Smith Chevrolet. I got it for a wee bit of a song. Next wish?
A new Chevy C10 pickup.
There you go. Less than $6,900 at E.B. Smith. What's your last wish?
Stop in at E.B. Smith Chevrolet and save at our St. Patty's Day tent sale.
Out of your heart comes a shamrock.